So there you were, cruising down the road, enjoying the sound of your V12 Corona, when suddenly, something jumps out in front of your car. An attempt to avoid it sends your world into chaos. Time slows down and everything in your car becomes airborne. Thoughts race through your head as your vision fades and all you can think of is whether you close the garage door before leaving the house. Moments later, you wake up, a bit dazed but thankfully alive. If you're in the US, congrats! You've just joined the ranks of the 6.1 million folks who experience a car accident each year and fortunately fall into the 99% survival club. Back in the golden age of cars, as some would like to say, where fuel efficient, affordable, and reliable were the kings. These things were built like tanks. I'm talking heavy-duty materials that could probably survive an apocalypse. Fast forward to now, and we're in a whole new battlefield. People love throwing around the big four-letter S word. Some say Teslas are, or I'm, or you're safe. Safety has become the new norm for everyone. Flying across the highway cosplaying a crayon is no longer the preferred transportation method. With some clever engineering, modern cars have swapped out the tank-like bodies for lighter materials and introduced crumple zones. Crumple zones are areas at the front and back of a car made to get wrecked in a collision and slow down the deceleration. This absorbs the force of the impact, preventing it from being transmitted to the occupants. This is also why newer cars look so destroyed after crashes. When you slam on your brakes, the force you experience is much greater than if you were to gradually slow down. Remember the physics class favorite, force equals mass times acceleration/deceleration. Even cutting the deceleration from a quarter of a second to half a second will result in a 50% reduction in total force. This shift in focus towards safety is also backed by recent studies. Check out this graph showing the fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, which is a measure of how much driving is happening. Back in 1966, the fatality rate was a whopping 5.5%. Fast forward 55 years, and it's dropped to a significantly safer 1.37%. That's a staggering 75.82% decrease. The model year of a vehicle also affects fatality rates. Drivers of vehicles that were 18 plus years or older, think 1994 at the time of this study, were 71% more likely to be fatally injured than other vehicles that were 3 years old or less. So how were we able to make such astronomical improvements during this time? Crash tests and dummies. But test dummies didn't always exist, and researchers were faced with a dilemma. How can we understand the effects of a crash on a body without, well, a body? Live human volunteers could be used for some tests, but when nobody showed up for more intrusive survivability tests, we were back to square one. What do you mean you don't want to be strapped to a car and slammed into a brick wall? The solution? Cadavers. Think dead human bodies. Dropping bodies down elevator shafts to see the physical effects became a thing, and yeah, we'll just leave it at that. While the use of cadavers provided some valuable information, it was far from an ideal solution. Beyond the ethical considerations, there were practical challenges. Cadavers have limitations in mimicking the dynamic responses of living bodies, especially when it comes to assessing injuries in real time. And so came pigs on sleds and dogs in car seats. What a magical sight! We just need to turn that pig's frown upside down, wipe away those bloodstains, and ignore the fact that they totally did not want to be there. Ta-da! Camera ready. Yeah, Peter was all over that. And so eventually came crash test dummies. These specially designed models marked a significant leap forward in automotive safety research. Take the Hybrid 3 family for instance, the most well-known across auto dummies. Family ranges from toddlers to adults. The most widely used members being a 5'9", 171-pound dummy meant to represent the average North American male. Inside each dummy, there's a whole array of sensors and electronics to measure, well, everything from how fast the dummy moves to how much it squishes, and even the impacts on specific body parts. The BioRid, biofidelic rear impact dummy, even has a spine composed of 24 segments meant to mimic the movement of a human spine during a collision. A Hybrid 3 dummy can come packed with over 50 sensors, allowing it to track upwards of 35,000 pieces of data in just a single crash. But the smart features don't come cheap. Each dummy is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Wait, are you telling me this dummy here has a higher net worth than me? So that means I'm below a dummy, so I'm a dummy? A dummy. Anyways, with so many intricacies, each and every dummy needs to be calibrated before it can be used. A Hybrid 3 can require days before it's ready because of how much precision there is in the steps. And I mean precision as in, it's so detailed, it's honestly quite hilarious. For example, in section 12.1, the jacket and clothing assembly of the user manual, it mentions that the dummy should wear snug-fitting cotton knit t-shirt and pants. The t-shirt and pants should each weigh no more than 0.27 kilograms, 0.6 pounds. Garments similar to thermal underwear usually meet these requirements. Then later on for shoes, it mentions that the 50th percentile males, which is the dummy that's used most often, uses size 11 extra wide dress Oxfords, whose weight each is 1.25 pounds. Just wow, these dummies dress fancier than I do. I just imagine going to Target and asking the lady who works there, excuse me ma'am, could you please tell me where the clothes that weigh less than a pound are? I need to dress up my doll, dummy. Safety first. If weighing your clothes ends up being a new way to show off, you heard it here first. The next time someone tries to show off how posh they are, just tell them, well, I bet your clothes don't weigh 0.6 pounds like mine do. The testing stuff is also straight out of a sci-fi flick. For example, they have a head drop test where they literally yank off the head and drop it from exactly 376 millimeters to measure the forehead response to frontal impacts with a hard surface. I guess this is the modern day elevator shaft drop. Then there's the thorax impact test, where they have a test probe, as they call it, smack the chest with over 1,300 pounds of force, which is roughly equivalent to being hit by a car traveling 30 to 40 miles per hour, or 48 to 64 kilometers per hour, to see how the ribs bend and flex. They also have a rule to wait at least 30 minutes before a successive test. Maybe it's the dummy version of a pep talk like, hey buddy, you absolutely nailed being hit by that car. Ready for round 2? Crash tests are still a relatively new thing, with the 2 primary testing organizations in the United States beginning in the late 1900s. The NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and the IIHS, Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. While both groups assess vehicle safety through crash testing, their methods are quite different. NHTSA uses a 5-star rating system with standardized crash tests, while IIHS has a 4-tier system and conducts a broader range of tests. IIHS at one point had 8 distinct tests for assessing vehicles, but over time some were phased out thanks to significant advancements made by automakers. On the flip side, frontal crashes were the pioneering test and remain ongoing to this day. As the most common scenario to result in fatalities, this crucial test is regularly updated with 3 different variations in its current rotation. Take the driver's side small overlap front test, as they call it, for instance. It's meant to simulate what happens when the front left corner of your car is hit. Exactly 25% of the car's front width collides into a barrier at 40 miles per hour, 63.47 kilometers per hour. Now, most modern cars have good coverage in a straight up head-on collision because of those crush zones we talked about earlier. The twist here is that we're hitting the outer edges, spots where the crush zone isn't the hero. Instead, we rely on the safety cage to resist deformation to keep the people inside safe. Automakers dialed out their A-game in response and beefed up the structures and airbags, but it turns out that these upgrades didn't fully translate to the passenger side. So in 2017, the 3rd variant was added for this scenario, the constant game of cat and mouse between the testers and the manufacturers. The results of these tests are then rated across 3 critical factors: structural performance, injury measures, and restraints. Structural performance is all about how much the car's framework gives in or bends. Injury measures dives into crash test dummy sensors, think head, neck, chest, leg, and feet. These sensors predict the chances of occupants getting different types of injuries. And lastly, restraints. How the dummy moves during a collision is also important. You see, a low injury measure score on a dummy does not mean mission accomplished. Because of the variance in how people actually sit compared to the dummy, actual injuries could still occur for a person. So we need to see the different objects that the dummy actually comes into contact with so your head doesn't get impaled by the steering wheel column, for example. After tallying up the scores and getting a rating, results show that if you're behind the wheel of a good rated model, you're 46% less likely to die in a head-on crash with a similar vehicle compared to someone cruising in a model with a poor rating. As for side crashes when stacked against a poor rating, the survival odds break down like this: 70% for a good rating, 64% for an acceptable rating, and 49% for a marginal rating. Crash testing is also not confined to the physical world. Back in 2000, Toyota rolled out Thumbs, Total Human Model for Safety. Breaking ground as a pioneer software program to faithfully replicate the mechanical traits of the human body. Thumbs allows researchers to dive into simulated collisions, examining their effects on the human form. And ongoing development now even captures how people instinctively shift positions and flex their muscles when navigating a vehicle in an emergency. Cool stuff. In the ever-evolving landscape of vehicle design, manufacturers are constantly making changes. However, the reality of time and budget constraints make it impractical to test every single one. IIHS acquires its vehicles the same way you or I would from dealerships. Because of these budget constraints, IIHS focuses its crash testing efforts on the most popular vehicles, leaving the pricier options such as Porsches, for example, untouched by their testing. This is not to say that they've never been crash tested though, just that the reports aren't public. After all, selling a new vehicle in the US requires manufacturers to meet federal safety standards and local laws, ensuring a baseline level of safety. For example, in 1978, the first child passenger safety law was enacted in Tennessee, requiring parents to place place young children in an approved child restraint system. 1984, New York State passes first U.S. law requiring seatbelt use. 1998, dual airbags for frontal impact became mandatory. 2006, new vehicles being sold must have a vehicle safety rating label. 2007, electronic stability control and tire pressure monitoring systems are required. 2018, backup cameras become mandatory. Naturally, these standards, ratings, laws, and regulations evolve along with vehicle design. Every single year, the IIHS hands out gold stars, the top safety pick and top safety pick plus award for the vehicles that meet the most stringent requirements, and it's not uncommon to see these same vehicles being downgraded later down the road. And our system currently is still far from perfect. Research has shown that women are still more likely to be killed or injured in car crashes. Why? Well, male and female bodies are fundamentally different biologically, yet most safety policies and research have been tailor-made for the 50th percentile male, which is also out of date and was defined almost 50 years ago. Not to mention that in the United States, females actually hold more driving licenses than males. Since car designs take influence from crash tests, biases in the way the cars are crashed and reported on affect the way the cars are manufactured. Other than trying to improve the impacts of crashes themselves, providing driver assistance technology such as automatic emergency braking, lane departure, forward collision warnings, and of course self-driving have the potential to reduce crashes and save thousands of lives every year. Studies have shown that over 90% of accidents are caused at least in part from human error. However, as our cars become smarter, everything comes with a price tag. While these features undeniably enhance road safety, the reality is that safety versus affordability is still a trade-off that many need to make. This raises a critical concern. Even with the proliferation of safety advancements, the affordability of these safer vehicles may be out of reach for many, potentially limiting the widespread adoption of these life-saving technologies. The average age of cars on the road in the United States is 12.5 years. Over the past few years, car prices have skyrocketed. Data from Kelley Blue Book, a company that provides market values of vehicles, showed that in 2019, the average price of a new car was $36,825. By the end of 2023, it increased to over $48,000. That's a 32.4% increase. Until car prices become more affordable, that 1999 beige Toyota Corolla may very well continue to live on. And there you have it, my newfound appreciation of crash tests. If you want to see where Bear Brown ends up next, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Next time you see a dummy, say thanks to it. Or don't. That's kind of weird.